Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the national headquarters of the Theosophical Society in America. My name is John Chian Josie. I'm the Director of Public Programs, and at this time I ask that you turn off your cell phones and other noisy devices that you have on you. This evening's lecture is being streamed live, and I welcome all the friends watching through the internet. The Theosophical Society promotes study, meditation, and service. We encourage open-minded inquiry into the world religions, philosophy, science, and the arts. And we have a deep respect for the unity of all life. Our goal is to help people explore the spiritual path so as to arrive at a deeper understanding regarding the wisdom of the ages. Furthermore, we feel this wisdom is not limited to any one tradition, and thus we offer programs from all traditions. Normally, I invite people to take some of our program catalogs, but as we are running low on those, we had to make some extra copies, and there are some out there. If you haven't got one as yet, please take one. But you can find the listing of all these programs on our website, and there you can also register for any program that is of interest to you. The Theosophical Society is a membership organization, and I think that quite a few of you are members. However, if you know someone who's not a member, encourage them to join, provided that they are in agreement with the mission of the organization and see value in the work that we are doing. And of course, please rejoin as well, every year. Now this evening, I'm very happy to introduce someone who's known to you, I am sure, to most of you, as she has spoken here on a number of occasions and also works here. Danelys Valcarcel Cuellar is a Cuban-born artist. She is a student of Theosophy and Hindu philosophy, and has dedicated the past 13 years of her life researching the field of spiritual education. Currently working here, she also is a Montessori, Waldorf, and Krishnamurti teacher, and as well as doing many other things, so that she's always very, very busy and can have no free time to get up to anything other than wonderful, beneficial things. Tonight she is giving us this time to speak on a very wonderful topic. There is no religion higher than truth. Please welcome Danelys.
Good evening, friends, and thank you, John. Since we are celebrating the 143th anniversary of the Theosophical Society, I would like to start our program with a moment of silence and a little invocation, as I have done in previous years. There is a blessedness and a power beyond oneself, which comes to the aid of those who are prepared to receive. Let us turn to those great sources from whom strength and inspiration flow unfailingly. To all who, forgetful of self, are intent to learn and to share without reservation. May those who are the embodiment of love immortal bless with their help and guidance this society, founded to be a channel for their work. May they inspire it with their wisdom, strengthen it with their power, and energize it with their activity. Once again, good evening, friends, and thank you all for coming. Well, calling, I have received many phone calls. I cannot make it to your lecture tonight. And so I appreciate those who were able and courageously defeat the cold weather to sit here in person. Nothing I treasure more than sharing in person with my dear friends. And so I wonder how many of you have been as fascinated and puzzled even by the motto of the Theosophical Society, "There is no religion higher than truth." So I thought it was a very pertinent idea to talk a little bit about this motto as I introduce this program tonight, since we are celebrating the 143rd anniversary of the founding of the Society. And so I would like to share a little bit of history of how this motto was adopted by our organization. Many of you may not be familiar with that side of history yet. So the Theosophical Society, as all of us know, was founded on November 17th, 1875, 143 years ago, in New York City by the Russian noblewoman Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, the American Colonel Henry Steele Olcott, aided by the Irish American attorney William Quan Judge. So quite a trio. But they were not just the three of them. There were many other members that we don't know quite the names because they didn't make it to the fame part of the Theosophical Society. But thanks to those behind the scenes, to those silent workers for the Theosophical Society, we have what we call the Theosophical Society today. So many of those who follow the philosophy set forth by Madame Blavatsky, and in 1879, the principal founders, Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott, moved to India. And there, the Theosophical Society spread, with a lot of enthusiasm, with a lot of energy, and also was popularized because this idea was more and more welcome in the East than in the West. This idea of brotherhood to the Western world was still rather odd and, not only unclear, but almost impossible that we could live as one in this little globe we call Earth. And so in 1882, they established the Theosophical Society's headquarters in South India. The city that we call Madras today is called, not today, but back then was called Madras. Currently it's called Chennai. There is a river there called Adyar, and the city then where it is located, the headquarters is called Adyar. So they established the headquarters in this magnificent place. It's just an incredible source of life for all beings. There is an estuary there by the shores of the river, by the ocean. So there is an incredible energy in that center, and it has been our international headquarters ever since. So if it wasn't because of the effort of the founders to bring about this organization, many of us would not have been together here tonight. And perhaps we have never come across into contact with these ideas as old as the world itself that we call today the ancient or the ageless wisdom. So most interestingly, in December of 1880, nearly 138 years ago, Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott traveled to North India. So they were there to visit Mr. and Mrs. Sinnett, these two persons that were great instrumental to the Theosophical movement. And a little bit about Sinnett. He was a journalist, a British journalist, and he was one of the principal figures in this correspondence that we call today the Mahatma letters. So it was this intercourse of core theosophical knowledge in between theosophical Mahatmas, that we call the teachers of Blavatsky, and him and Hume, who was another British influenced person that brought about this correspondence. They were so eager to know about this knowledge, and they happened to be, in a position socially that they were able to spread these teachings more so than anybody else at the time. And so they were chosen for a reason. And so they travel, Blavatsky and Olcott, to different places in northern India. You know, Olcott also gave lectures in a few places. And among all their adventures, they ended up as guests in the none other than the palace of the Maharaj of Benares, today the city of Varanasi at the shores of the Ganga River. So this city is known to be today the spiritual capital of India. So it's an amazing place. And so they ended up there. And so this Maharaj, and as well as all these powerful families in India, have what we call here in America a slogan or a motto, you know, or a phrase that they live up to, you know, a highest ideal. These were noble men, noble women. And they decided to adopt, usually were taken from scriptures that they considered to be of value to live up to. And so he decided that this motto was going to be the motto of his family. So the founders that knew one thing or two about Hinduism said, this sounds just like the right motto for the Theosophical Society. So a most noble one, there is no religion higher than truth. And so in Sanskrit it says, Satyam na asti paro dharmaha. And so the Maharaj agreed, you know, to their petition, and sure enough, you know, he accepted, and this has remained the motto of the Theosophical Society ever since. So this very powerful statement is a fragment of a passage from the 12th book of the Hindu epic, this great Hindu epic, the Mahabharata. And this is from the book number 12, and the chapter is called Shanti Parvan. It is very interesting. The Hindu tradition is quite amazing. This probably is one of the most well-known parts of this Mahabharata, besides the Bhagavad Gita part, which is the book number 6, fragments of this book number 6. Some Hindus think that having the Mahabharata in their house will bring discord and war and fights in their nucleus of their family. So they don't want to have the Mahabharata in their home. And this book is full of wisdom. It's full of wonderful teachings. And so they say no. So they have broken it down because it's so thick. It has like, you know, more than 2 million of words. I have no idea. It's the longest epic ever written. So they have dissected into many pieces. So this volume happens to be one of the most well-written, not only written, but spread, that establish codes of conduct for society, for families, for noble men and women, and for people who want to know and live up to what they call dharma, the law of our best being. And so just a little passage of the story, you know, this is a dialogue in between Yudhishthira, which is the eldest and most righteous of the 5 Pandavas, you know, the 5 sons that within the Bhagavad Gita story, you hear about the Pandavas fighting, you know, the Kauravas. So this was the debate in between these cousins, and they were fighting for the kingdom at that time that was in danger. And so the oldest of them, after the war, went to the feet of Bhishma Pitama, who was the great uncle of all of them. This is a complicated mythology. I'm trying to tell it in a nutshell. And so at the end of the war, this brave warrior, who was, you know, the archetype of all Kshatriyas, of all the greatest warriors that ever exist in the world, he happened to be, you know, he's said to be the embodiment, the divine incarnation of Dharma. And so the way he was killed by thousands of arrows that penetrated his body. And yet he was not being able to be killed. And so he laid in these arrows. There was a bed of arrows. He was laying on top of these arrows for almost 60 days. And so both families grieved because this was a fundamental figure in their family that brought them together, that gave them a lot of wisdom. And so Yudhishthira at that point came to his deathbed and asked him a lot of questions. Some of these questions had to do with Dharma, because he was about to become the king, and he wanted to be a righteous king, a king that lived up to truth. And he was really terrified. He actually wanted to go into the jungle and didn't really want to take over his, responsibility. And so he asked, say, how, O Bharata, would a person act who desires to acquire and adhere to virtue? O bull of Bharata's race, possessed as thou art of learning, tell me this, questioned by me. Truth and falsehood exist, covering all the worlds. Which of these two, O king, would a person adopt that is firm in virtue? That again, what is truth and what is falsehood? What is eternal truth, eternal virtue? On what occasions should a person tell the truth? And on what occasions should he tell an untruth? So he posed these many questions all at once. And Bhishma Pitama, who was there, in his last breath, all he could say was, to tell the truth is consistent with righteousness. There is nothing higher than truth. Satyam na asti paro dharma. So those were the words of Bhishma at that time. The mythology continues. It's a wonderful story. It's one of my favorite scriptures because it teaches all sorts of things. It's an exploration of the responsibilities set forth by this code of good conduct in society, as our personal life, as a family, the duties of our social order. There is so much to that scripture. It's incredible. So the motto of the Theosophical Society, as we know it today, is an English translation of this Sanskrit phrase, which might also be translated as nothing is greater than truth, or there is no higher virtue than truth. There is a very humorous translation by George Arundel, who was one of our previous international president. He says that there is nothing nastier than truth. I say, that sounds more accurate than all the rest, but let's don't go there. So the first three words can be literally translated thus: Satyan, which means that truth or than truth. Na asti means is not. Paro means further, greater, or higher. Now, dharma, however, is a more complicated term because it has so many different translations and meanings depending on what context is being used. But the root meaning of this word is what is established or firm. Hence, it is attributed to the word law, because the law, when it is set, even though the more laws you make, the more laws you break, but it is said to be something that is fixed, that we obey and that we follow, as long as it is something that, is within, righteous means or ways of going about life. So, and from these basic roots, radiate so many other meanings, such as the essential qualities or characters of the cosmos of one's own nature, customs, duty, morality, justice, religion, teachings or doctrines, good works, essential nature, etc. So this word dharma is pregnant in so many meanings, but in the way we use it, roughly translated, we use it as there is no religion higher than truth. So the motto is not especially or specifically about what we think of as religion. It surely isn't. Instead, it firmly states that none of our commitments or social conventions, values, or personal ideas can measure up to the reality of what truth really is. And so many of you have in your hands what we call the Theosophical world view, which is nothing but the way we as students of Theosophy look into the world and look at the world. A Theosophical worldview, No, the view, or the ultimate view, is a way in which we look at the world. So that tradition, this theosophical tradition, is founded upon certain fundamental principles. We propose these principles for you, all of us, to consider. So the first one says that the universe and all that exists within it are one interrelated and interdependent whole. Every existent being, from atom to galaxy, is rooted in the same universal life-creating reality. This reality is all-pervasive, but it can never be summed up in its part, since it transcends all its expressions. It reveals itself in the purposeful, ordered, and meaningful processes of nature, as well as in the deepest recesses of the mind and spirit. That is a powerful statement. A powerful statement. So this magnificent and sweeping idea that the source and cause of all manifested existence is but one absolute reality is what many students of Theosophy, of old and of our times, throughout the ages, have held most high as the ultimate reality and truth of existence. This fundamental oneness, indivisible. And we attribute truth to so many other things, way far from that very essence. And it is indeed the most profound and life-changing and altering experience that any human being can ever have when you experience this truth on your own, genuinely, in our own lives. It is something that changes completely, that transforms us from inside out. So there, we call it the knowledge of truth, but there is also the experience of truth. So there is a great difference in between those two. And the truth that is lived and that is experienced is the one that we want to spend most of the time today talking about. So I arrived to a few questions that I would like to pose to all of us, and we can explore at different pace, and especially later on with a video that I would like to share with you by Joy Mills that touches upon many of these fundamental questions. And so the first question that I asked myself is, I say to myself, how do I know that the experience, which to me seems so very meaningful, was indeed a genuine encounter with truth? How do I know that this that I have experienced, that I find that is the most meaningful, altering experience, that it is the most profound pain or something of that nature, that it is rooted or that there is something of the true in it? And what action, therefore, right after that, what movement within me is necessary to translate that energy of truth into this life I am living today, into this very incarnation? This lecture or this presentation, I really wouldn't like it to be by any means something that we aspire to become. Something, although the word becoming is different, that changing or that one day is going to happen, it transforms in the second, and insight transforms us as a flash of understanding. It changes our physical constitution even. This is something that is accessible to all of us, not to the wise one, not to the well-read one, not to the one that is a scholar and has read so many volumes of all this literature and scriptures of the world. How can we, you and I, ordinary, simple people, attain and experience this fundamental thing in life, which is ultimately speaking the goal of our whole existence, to experience it and to become one with that. And so, in the earlier part of the video that Joy Mills, that I would like to show by Joy Mills, she has a wonderful explanation of what an experience is. And that measures as to what that experience, whether it is a truthful experience, or whether it is something that is fleeting, or whether it is something that was rooted in something that was not essentially of value. And she says, any experience which broadens rather than narrows, which expands rather than contracts our sensitivity to life and our concern for the welfare of others and for all that lives, must be one that at least approaches to truth, that at least approximates to truth. When the mind and the heart are one and completely open to that what is, then truth speaks to us. For we have come into perfect accord with the true nature of things. To come into such a perfect accord, there must be a cleansing of the heart and a cleansing of the mind, so that we may feel and see and know the one ultimate reality in the midst of the many, forgetting self in the wonder and the miracle and the magnificence of the one universal self. So let us explore briefly, because the time is running, some of the universal values found in these perennial teachings and their spiritual applications, which can lead us to this realization of truth. So Vicente Hauchin is one of the former presidents of the Theosophical Society in the Philippines. And he's put together a wonderful, wonderful seminar that is called The Process of Self-Transformation. I was a part of that seminar more than once. And a book came out of that seminar. It's called just like that, The Process of Self-Transformation. We have it in the library. It is an amazing practical guideline to our inner culture, to our character building, to the process of deconditioning for those things that are not true from our own nature. So this self-transformation process, according to the Theosophical teachings, it is an approach to the inner change. It's something that is happening within ourselves. It's nothing outwardly that you can see. Eventually you see the changes because it does impact everything that we do, but it's an inner change that is necessary to resolving both our personal problems and the problems of life in general and the problems in society, because we are a part of society. We are the world. We build society. Those things that we don't like in society, at some point, we were the doers of these rules. We were the ones who created this society. And now we complain, and now we are so agitated and discomforted and disappointed in those things that we see outside of ourselves. And how can we fix that? We are stuck. We are stuck there. And so the beginning of this self-transformation process, as Vic Hauchin postulates it in his book, it says that it consists of 4 aspects. And the very first aspect has to do with review our personal map of reality. In other words, what do we call to be true in our lives? The second has to do with a clarification of our personal values. And the third has to do with self-mastery, and the fourth has to do with transcendence. Now, the review of our personal map of reality or truth is something that at some point we have to sit with ourselves and ponder about. Because there are things that we consider to be true or reality that has nothing to do with that ultimate truth. In fact, me as an educator, I am exposed to several realities. The reality of each one of my students' family lives is different to my reality, what I call my reality. And so reality happens to be a more relative term. Truth, I put it perhaps above what it is reality. We can call it the ultimate reality, but for tonight's purpose, let's use the word reality as this that is changing and a little bit more dynamic and more applicable to you and I. And so the clarification of values, is the working that we have with our conditionings. So we have to really take a look at all our conditionings. What are the things that have from birth conditioned ourselves in a certain way that have impeded us from moving forward, from seeing life as it truly is? And the self-mastery has to do with the process of self-knowledge and the process of purification of the mind and purification of the heart. And ultimately, this transcendence has to do with the realization of this truth. So the clarification of values is also threefolded. We have the universal or core values, to take into consideration, which are things that we can call unchanging, because if they are truly universal, there will be something of value that is true across the board, across all the world religions, across all the countries, across all the people of the world, if we want to call them universal values. Is that correct? Does that make sense? Otherwise, it will be just my values or your values. Then we have the social and cultural values, which change from time to time. What we call it to be, culturally or ethically accepted from the societal point of view is not really the code 30 or 40 years ago. Let us look at our dress codes, and so many other things that have really changed with time that when we look back at it, that is so absolutely ridiculous. And now today we say, oh, look at this. The more flamboyant and, the more strange, the better, and the more exciting. So just, at that realm, things have changed quite a lot. Just imagine the rest of it. And then we come to the personal values. So these are the things that are in constant flux and in continuous reevaluation in our life. We have to all the time sit down and say, what are my values? What do I consider as true? Are they in accord and in harmony with the cultural values and those universal values? So this is a process, this is a process that we ourselves have to do on our own, because we are all unique individuals. My values and my beliefs and my experiences, what I call to be true, are true to me and to me alone. Even though someone tells me that that is absolute truth, I have to experience it. And I have to live up to that to see whether it sounds just right. Otherwise, we are just believing another story. So this alignment has to happen before we engage into any further spiritual practice, because down the road, we are going to encounter great difficulties. And if we talk about peace in the world, these are the things that we really have to look into very carefully, because this is the root of peace. Am I aligned to that fundamental oneness in some way or another? Questions that I have to ask myself every time when I teach, when I go about, because I have to be an example of that for my students. I don't talk these lofty ideas with them, but somehow I have to embody a little bit of that goodness so that they can nourish from that. So am I truthful in my speech? Am I truthful in my doings, in the things that I am transmitting to them when I laugh, when I am in front of them and I am concerned? Am I truthful? Am I truly interested in the piece of art that they have done? I say, oh, that is so beautiful, and I go about, no, am I truly interested in what they have done or not? So truth is certainly a dynamic process. If we compare it with life, truth and life to me are not different. It's just the same one thing. It's very dynamic. It's always not the ultimate truth, you know, but the things that let's talk about the reality instead of truth. This reality that we call to be our reality is constantly changing, as I said, you know, and we should hold these truths in our lives very, very lightly, because certainly they will change, or they will deepen, or they will expand. And if there is no room for that, we are pretty, you know, we have a big challenge there in front of us. So even this theosophy that we are talking today with so much enthusiasm, that we think that it is, you know, is the most familiar thing of all, that it is so rich, so vast, so profound, and absolute for some people, is but a shadow, only a shadow, a small fragment of that eternal wisdom of life. And so, that puts it really in perspective. Some of us gather all our authority and all our experience to say, this is the theosophical truth, and beyond that, there is nothing. Or beyond that, and say, we have to be very careful how we present this theosophical worldview and our ideas, even though we think that that ultimate truth of the oneness of life, it is something that embraces it all. It is but a view of the world, a view of the universe. There is a common thread among all the world religions that seem to be in accord with that, but I hold it still very lightly, even though I live by it, because we really don't know how much that view can expand, and not even expand, how much deeper I can experience it. So even though that sounds so real to me, I leave it open to more exploration. So what are the conditions to awakening to this truth? You know, what are the I won't say prerequisites, because that puts it as a technique. This is not a technique, but something that there are capacities within ourselves that we just have to change geared and pay attention to that, as opposed to, oh, I need to change myself, I need to do this, and then I will sit down and the truth will come to me. It's not that sort of a process. It is a different kind of thing. So the first thing that we need to consider is that we have to have reverence for the whole of life. If we don't have reverence for life, there is no way we can experience anything of the sublime, of the extraordinary, because it really will not reveal to us. It seems that this truth that is so invisible and hidden and sacred, it reveals itself before those who have that soul quality to behold it, who have that reverence, and who have been at some point puzzled or have asked the question that want to encounter that reality. And with that reverence, we have to really walk our lives at all times. It's just an attitude of soul to be reverent for all that lives, not just for human beings, but this is one of the qualities of the Theosophists, that we develop this reverence for life. So the second has to do with cultivating or sort of instilling in ourselves or stimulating in ourselves an interest in finding this truth. You know, to have a sense of wonder, a curiosity for life, to wanting to be engaged with life. A person who is not really engaged in life, I am not sure if the truth is going to come knock, knock at their door. It really doesn't happen that way. It is only when we are really in the midst of the matter then the most amazing things revealed to us. Isn't that the truth? Isn't it? And so this implies not having any prejudices or any conviction that one knows already anything. So truth cannot be discovered by a mind which has fixations, prejudices, and biases of any kind. It just doesn't happen that way. As much as we want to build our minds around it, we just don't see it. So the third condition has to do with awakening this undisturbed serenity. And I would say awakening is because there is a part of us that is serene, that is tranquil, but we don't go there. That part of us is always asleep. We don't deal with that part of ourselves all the time. Hence, all the encouragement to practice meditation and to do all these disciplines or self-disciplines that provide in our lives, a moment of inner peace. So that is required. So, many factors cause the mind to lose its serenity at all the time. All the time we are tempted. All the time we are, in a state of agitation. All the passions which agitate the mind, we know them all. Jealousy, envy, hatred, fear most of all. They distort the ability of the mind to see the real facts as they are. We see through a lens that is totally distorted. And we have this hindsight. We are able to see towards the past so far, but we have very little sight into the future. The foresight is so blurry. It's almost like we have this myopia, chronic myopia into our own future. Hence, we have to go to those people to read our future and to give us advice. When we ourselves have that capacity, if we are able to understand what is happening in the present moment, that sets forth the message into the future. What is going to happen? We only have the wisdom to read our present moment, but we don't. But we have to dedicate space for that. We all have that capacity. And so, there is a story that I would like to share with you that I find so beautiful. And many of us have heard it before, those who hang out with me and study in the Dharma study group, but I have never told it in all the details. And I think that you are going to enjoy it. It is called The Story of the Wise Old Man by the Sea. There once was a wise old man seated on the rock by the seashore. The sun had already set, and his disciple approached him and noticed that he had been absorbed in deep reflection longer than usual, and interrupting the master's silence in great amazement and asked him, "Master, how is it possible that you can still have any doubt left whatsoever about anything in life after knowing all there is to know in this world?" The master acknowledged his disciple and said, "Pay close attention to these drawings I am about to make and tell me what you see." So the master picked up a slender twig from the ground and drew 2 circles in the sand. I'm just going to do it there, but just use your imagination. It is more alive in our imagination. So he drew a circle as small as an apple. And he drew a huge circle as big as a chariot wheel. Huge wheel, just like that. And he said, "Tell me what you see." The disciple, not knowing what to answer, replied, "I just see 2 circles, one small and another huge, very large." With a smile, the master said, "Let us look at it together. The small circle you see represents your knowledge, all you have learned from me all these 3 years. The large circle, however, represents my lifelong knowledge. As you can perceive, my knowledge is more greater than yours, of course, but it can only encompass a small portion of this vast sand that lies before us, as large as my circle is. All that is left outside of these circles is reality, or truth, if we want to call it that way, and all the unknowns that surrounds us. It is easy to see that your little knowledge is in lesser content with the unknown than my vast knowledge, And this is why I still have far more reasons to wonder at life, even though I have greater and greater wisdom than you. So that is the story. Isn't that a powerful story? So this process of coming to know the truth maybe is about not the knowledge that we acquire, but how closer and how much we expand our capacity to be in touch, the sense of touch. How much are we in touch with that which is real? And how much are we far away? You know, the closer we get, the truth walks towards us. The farther we get, it pulls back. It's just that kind of dynamism. So this story really tells us quite a perspective. So the Theosophic life stands upon 3 pillars of equal measurement. You know, we have, I could actually do a little drawing here so that maybe we can see, maybe in black. We have, often you see this very interesting symbol, which is the symbol of the white brotherhood. These 3 dots. Everyone asks, what are these 3 symbols? It can be the Trinity, men. It can be so many things.
It's a present too.
But out of my own will, I'm going to use it this way today. How about that? Is it closer to truth or not as truthful? So in here we have study, we have meditation, and we have selfless service. To all fellow beings. We don't talk about selfless service to just the human beings that have hair and beards and all this stuff. No, we're talking about to all living creatures that partake in this phenomenon we call life upon the earth and in the whole entire cosmos. And so, this little discipline that seems to be so simple for us is a threefold self-discipline that we decide to take upon ourselves to experience and to explore as we walk along the theosophical path, and ultimately it leads us to awaken in us some genuine universal values. And you may say, how does that relate to that? So the experience of love, the experience of compassion, and the experience of understanding. So through study, we develop understanding, perhaps. I have a better paper over here. And give me our notes about it. And this has to do with the development of the mind. So through meditation, we awaken to love, and has to do with the heart. And this selfless service has to do with compassion. And has to do with no other than our spiritual will. And so this is obviously a dynamic process of a life, a way of living that you cannot do one without touching the other 2 areas. So it is something that has to nourish from one another. And that leads also to simplicity of life, to selflessness of life, to contentment, to a life of gratitude, and so many other things that are of universal value, as I said. So I would like to submit to you that this is a life that anyone can live. It's not just for Theosophists. It's something that we can do on our own rate, that no one competes with one another. This is something that we can just give it a try and see how these aspects of our lives are nourished or neglected, and see how we can develop in a more wholesome way in these three aspects of our higher spiritual nature. And so, in other words, these capacities awaken our true spiritual nature. For it is only through the clear eyes of the Spirit that truth can be experienced and realized in the depths of our own being. And so the time is really up, and I really wanted to show you that video by Joy Mills. And since it is the founding of the Theosophical Society's anniversary, there was some passage that I took from the conclusion part of The Key to Theosophy, which is one of my favorite books, actually written by Madame Blavatsky at the end of her life, in a format of questions and answers that had to do with the Theosophical movement, the structure of the movement, with the teachings. So in a nutshell, is a compacted form of what we call ourselves as Theosophical Society and our teachings. And so there's the end part of the book. It is an inquiry in between, a person that tells or asks Blavatsky, tell me what you expect of Theosophy in the future and of the Theosophical Society. And she says, if you speak of Theosophy, I answer that as it has existed eternally throughout the endless cycles upon cycles of the past, so it will exist throughout the infinitudes of the future, because Theosophy is synonymous with everlasting truth. She further states, its future will depend, and this is a little bit more of a problematic. She was quite a confrontational person. She always had to add a little pinch of spice there to get us going. So say, its future will depend its future will depend almost entirely upon the degree of selflessness, earnestness, devotion, and last but not least, of the amount of knowledge and wisdom possessed by those members of whom it will fall to carry on the work. So I feel bad for those who are in charge of the Theosophical Society, because she has really left a very lofty work for them and heavy work for them to lift. But they are most capable, and we trust that this Theosophical movement, not only thanks to those who are in charge, but those who contribute, members like you and I, to get this huge Theosophical worldwide movement going. And so she further states that it is not a matter of technical knowledge of the esoteric doctrine, though that knowledge is also important, but it is the kind of knowledge that is imbued with the vitality which living truth alone can impact. So truth as a living thing, we often attribute knowledge or compare knowledge with the accumulation of facts we call hardcore facts and concepts. But obviously, this is not what our founder had in mind when she stated these powerful words. So I will invite you to share with me this video by Joy Mills that I think that will really complement the rest of the lecture. And to be honest with you, the way I planned it is I was so sick for 2 days at home without being able to go to work, and I thought that I was not going to be able to talk at all. And so I was going to avoid most of this lecture and show the half of the lecture for 30 minutes at Joy Mills. And so I hope that you have not much to do at home and you can just watch this video that is so inspiring for the rest of the evening. Since we are celebrating the 143rd anniversary of the Theosophical Society, join me in sharing with her insights.
It is the encounter with living truth that opens the doorway to real knowledge, and that vitalizes and revitalizes us from within with an enthusiasm, a God-filled inspiration, which is enthusiasm. The very meaning of the word enthusiasm, God-filled, if you like. The one-filled. We are filled with that oneness, which leads us to act at every moment in accordance with that view. All other truths are secondary, deriving from this one fundamental principle. And how? By what means does the ultimate reality reflect itself in a world of being and becoming? HPB used the analogy of the breath for the aliveness of the one, this universal consciousness that throbs, pulses everywhere throughout the universe. This is the very fabric of being, which exhibits itself in all of the variety of ways in which being manifests, but it's the very throbbing and pulsing of that which underlies all things. That is the breath. That breathing in and breathing out reflects itself in a dynamic polar relationship exhibited everywhere throughout the manifested system. The basic life action of the universe everywhere repeats the rhythmic order of the one, breathing in and breathing out. And if our poor globe, Earth, is having a difficult time, it almost has a kind of cosmic asthma afflicting it, if I can put it that way, having difficulty breathing in and breathing out because of the pollution that we have visited upon us, because of all that we have tried to do to harm it, to exploit it, to misuse it, and to abuse it, then it is for us to clear out the lungs of the earth that it may breathe freely again and dispense with this terrible cosmic asthma, as I call it. And so arises our interconnectedness with all that exists. And recalling that statement that real knowledge becomes fohat or eros, we can quite simply say that the link then is love, eros. There's a beautiful passage in one of Plato's dialogues, the Symposium, that points to this linkage between the ultimate reality, the world of the gods, as Plato terms it, and the manifested system, the universe in which we dwell. Socrates, in that dialogue, relates what he has learned from Diotima, a wise woman whom he calls his instructress. And when Socrates asks Diotima whether love is mortal or immortal, the wise woman responds that love is neither mortal nor immortal, but in a mean between the two, intermediate between the divine and the mortal. And Diotima continues saying, God mingles not with man, but through love all the intercourse and converse of gods with men is carried on. The wisdom which understands this is spiritual. And so that beautiful linkage, that link, that dynamism, eros, love, which unites the world of reality, the world of the gods, with our human existence, expands ever outwards to include all beings. Love, then, if you prefer the term compassion, is the living energy that unites us and connects us with the ultimate by whatever name we may call it: God, Brahma, the One, the vastness, the realm of the gods. And it is the same energy that also links us, connects us with everything and everyone in the universe, with the distant stars as with the blade of grass and the pebbles beneath our feet, with those we call our friends as with those we may think of as our enemies. For all is made of the same substance, the same fabric, whether we call it by such names as Akasha, Mula Prakriti, Alaya, to use some terms that you may come across in the secret doctrine, or we designate it as spirit matter, matter energy, consciousness matter. In the world about us, we tend to see only dualities, polarities, and we speak of these as opposites. What is this is not what is that, and what is that is not what is this. But when we change our focus, as it were, see what is, and realize fully that there is only one ultimate substance which manifests itself in a multiplicity of ways, all linked together in that purest of relationships, a relationship unencumbered by our usual likes and dislikes, the relationship we call love, then action flows naturally, spontaneously, beautifully. And we do unto the least that which we would do unto the greatest. When that great truth is seen in all its magnificent splendor, then we know that the lawful action which we call karma, which is really harmony, is truly love. We think often of karma, which has become a very popular word and found in TV ads and magazines and everything today. We think of it as the consequences of action. But when we know that inherent in the one ultimate reality is order, purpose, supreme harmony, then there is only the breathing in and the breathing out. Rhythmic order, which is lawfulness. And that is karma as creativity, karma as love, the pulsation of the one, ever acting in a loving manner. Every act, whether of thought or feeling or physical expression, becomes one of love, having within it the creative potential to bring into being that which is new, fresh, vital, beautiful, an expression of truth, the living truth. Consciousness, then, is right and truth-bearing. And so we walk through the world, not on some path that others tell us about, not following others, whether those others be Mahatmas or saints or sages or our dearest friends, but on that path which is uniquely our own, the path which we have become. For as the voice of the silence, that magnificent final gift of HPB to the world, so rightly declares, thou canst not travel on the path until thou hast become that path itself. So I propose to you that every genuine experience awakens us in some measure, awakens us to what is, to the reality of what really is. And if the experience is truly meaningful, with its own significance to which we give our attention, then it also vitalizes us, gives us renewed energy, strength to do what we are intended to do in the world, to walk the world as human beings. For we have learned to fly in the sky like birds and to swim in the ocean as fish. It's time we learn to walk the earth as human beings, with love, with compassion, with understanding. For experience is not when something happens to us, which is our usual interpretation of the idea of karma. Oh, this happened to me, that must be my karma. Stupid. What a horrible thing. Experience occurs when we happen to an event. For the lawfulness of everything is present in every moment. And when we happen to an event so as to change us, to alter our perception, to gain a new understanding, a new insight, that is an experience that transforms. And it's in that change, that new perception, that new understanding, that the creative nature of karma is realized and we're inwardly transformed. For karma is love, is harmony. That new harmony that arises out of the old. That principle which is ever seeking to move us in new directions toward ever greater understanding. And so karma is also opportunity. The opportunity to be other than we are right now. The opportunity to be that which we would be. To do that which we would do if we truly wish to be creative agents in building a world at peace. What matters is not whether we believe in this or that idea, however great the idea. What matters is what we know, genuinely know. And to know means that we have looked with new eyes upon ageless and immortal principles and translated them into living experience. The theme for our summer gathering this year has been given as Theosophy in Action. But I propose that when we have actually encountered the truth that is Theosophy, it is action. Theosophy is action. It moves us. It shakes us and stirs us and transforms us if we have really encountered it. Often we speak of a threefold division in the theosophical life: meditation, study, service. But for the one whose life is infused with the dynamics of a living truth, of Theosophy itself, the three are one. They cannot be separated. Every moment is a moment of total awareness, full attention, profound meditation, giving attention to what is. And every moment is a moment of study, of learning, as we, to use the words of Light on the Path, regard earnestly all the life that surrounds us. And in each moment, there are opportunities for countless little acts of kindness. It is really all so very simple, for living truth is effortless. It's not whether we are sevenfold or fivefold or threefold beings, a heptad of bodies, physical, astral, mental, all the rest of it, but whether we know ourselves as a continuum of energy within the one ultimate energy field we call reality, or by any other name. and so act as a whole being in tune, in perfect accord with that oneness. It's not whether there are processes called reincarnation, one existence following another in endless succession, ad nauseam ad infinitum, but whether in this moment we are reborn into a new vision of wholeness from which every action flows outwards to heal as our present presence in the world becomes a benediction on all that exists. In every moment there is a dying and a rebirth, an emerging of the new which can only occur when we let go, when we die to the has-been, that we may delight in the isness of now, this very moment, with all its rich opportunities to act with loving kindness, to send out thoughts of love and beauty and strength, to feel at one with all that lives. And all that it takes, my friends, is not major projects and big projects. Yes, those are needed too. But all it takes is a smile as you walk through life and greet each other. It's not whether there are Mahatmas or masters, whether they are still with us, the great ones of wisdom and compassion, and whether there is some path that leads us to them. The question is the kind of life we are living each day, in each moment of each day, how we walk upon the earth, the road we are taking in company with all humanity. Yes, all humanity and all that lives. And whether we are lending a hand to those who may be stumbling and who may need our help. It's not always whether we are being of service in the world, but whether it is it's a matter of whether we are serving by being present, being here and now in the world. Action is not always a physical busyness, being busy doing many things. Action may also be silent, for what we are, as Emerson once wrote, speaks louder than any words we may speak. Recently I was reading once again the words spoken by Annie Besant at the last convention over which she presided. It was at our world headquarters, of course, Adyar, in December of 1931. She was already frail, but managed to speak in what was reported to have been a remarkably powerful and vibrant voice. And here was this magnificent woman whose presidency of the Theosophical Society encompassed a period of tremendous growth and expansion, whose books are still inspiration to so many who are seeking to know the meaning and purpose of existence. Here was one who could speak knowingly on the most profound aspects of the philosophy, the metaphysics of Theosophy, who was familiar with what we may call all the technicalities of the Theosophical worldview, one who learned Sanskrit that she might translate so beautifully that splendid text, the Bhagavad Gita. And this is what she said in her last address to the International Convention of the Theosophical Society. Friends, she said, the point I want to impress upon all of you today is that only as you live Theosophy can you spread Theosophy. It is not our words, it is our life that affects people. And I want each one of us and all of whom you have influence with to remember that one who lives a theosophical life is the best propagandist of theosophical ideas. It is not our words, but our lives. Our lives, if they are unselfish, pure, loving, and helpful. It is no good to talk Theosophy unless we live what we talk. Most of you are afraid to trust yourselves, she said, but that is a great mistake. The deeper you go into yourself, the more real you can be trusted. The weakest among you physically may be very, very strong on higher planes. Learn to trust the divine in you. It matters very little what you believe. It matters enormously what you are. And so, dear friends, the noblest life is that life in which the living truth has taken root in our experience. The life of ever-renewed vitality and strength and the energy of love. There are those who say, and I've heard them, and people have said it to me, that Theosophy is complicated, too difficult to understand, that it deals only with abstractions which have no relation to the problems of daily living. But I suggest to you that in its essence, in its ultimate truthfulness, it is very simple. To experience the ultimate oneness, and so to live that primal truth in every moment of every day. For then we would know what it would be like, to answer Richard Bach's question, to live in a world where we choose our highest right and not our darkest wrong. And we would have rebuilt our universe out of the vision which the encounter with truth has given to us. Yes, the Theosophical Society will endure, so long as there are those in it who in themselves exhibit the vitality of living truth. It will continue to be a beacon light for those who seek in earnestness a channel of light and beauty and love, radiating ever outwards to encompass without boundaries all humanity in a living, vibrant brotherhood of humanity. Thank you.
And now Danelys is going to take questions for 5 minutes. But that was truly beautiful, Danelys.
Yes.
It is a little beyond our regular program time, but that's fine. We do to have some questions.
As I said, I was not planning to talk this much, but I went ahead. And since it is the anniversary of the Theosophical Society, it was a good way to wake her up for, from the heaven she is in, and make her alive again and share with us her deepest thoughts on this profound subject. And so the discovery of truth, according to the Theosophical teachings, as you just said, you just saw, it takes place in the midst of, that vital and dynamic process of our own lives. We are encouraged to purify our minds and our hearts and develop the will to dare to inquire, to think deeply, independently, clearly, freely, without prejudice. For truth is not away from life. It reveals itself in the very moment of our daily living. So thank you, everyone, for being here with us tonight. And keep the Theosophical Society rolling. It is a work of all of us. And the world needs it tremendously, more than ever. So thank you.
And we do have time for a few questions, so please don't hesitate to just raise your hand, or if you'd like to make a comment. questions are always good.
I'm a little bit confused. It's my natural condition, don't worry.
We are all confused.
The beautiful story you told at the beginning with the guy who had 2 arrows per every square inch in his body. The aspiring king asked him a lot of questions. One of the questions he asked, what is truth? And that is the thing I'm confused about. Sometimes you seem to relate to facts, sometimes you seem to relate to a situation, sometimes you seem to relate to goodness. What, in this context, or in the context of the motto, the logo of the Theosophical Society, what is the meaning of truth in that condition, in that situation?
That is a good question to summarize it all. As I said, truth is not different from life as a whole. And that life is ultimately one, is one existence. So we as Theosophists believe that life is ultimately one unit from which everything emanated, out of a portion of which everything emanated, and ultimately everything will recede, everything will go back to that, universal source, immanent, omnipotent, omnipresent source of existence. And so you have realities within realities. We have the ultimate reality, if you will, which is this oneness, which is this unity, but within it, everything that is manifested out of that reality, it is relative. There is a relativity to it all, your reality, my reality. And those parallel realities somehow have to mirror, in some measurement, that order, that harmony of the universe. Does that make sense? Somehow we have to make our lives in accordance and in harmony. My values, our cultural values, our universal values somehow have to come to somewhat a harmony. Otherwise the world, my life, will be unbearable. And so we have to talk of truth at all these dimensions, even though it's ultimate and it's very simple. I could just stand here today and say, all is one, see you tomorrow. That's all there is to know. But it becomes very complex when we see it through these 2 eyes as opposed to 1 eye. It is like a kaleidoscope. It has many facets. But ultimately speaking, when the light is shining right above us, when the sun is right at 12 o'clock, in its very summit up there, there is no shadow. There is only one light. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? No?
I'm more confused than I was before, but it's okay.
It is good to be confused because I'm not here to give you any answer. I am happy that you are all triggered by it. And hence you go and embark on this journey of discovery because there's no...
The problem I have is you're talking about something and I don't know what it is. You use a word.
The word truth.
And I don't know what it means in your context.
We're talking about experiencing this oneness in our daily life. It seems that we have to sit down to meditate, to go to India, to go through these transcendental meditation courses, to be enlightened, to have these journeys far away from us, when we can realize this fundamental principle of life here now, in the midst of our daily living. We separate our spiritual life from our livelihood, the way we make money, when we cook, when we deal with our husbands and wives, when we deal with our children and our profession. And none of those things are divorced from this experience of oneness. Even though, we are a little biased and we say, my child is the most beloved child in the world, and, and we separate each other that way. But there is a way that we can love everyone, even though I prefer that very person that is so dear to me. But when we are together, I don't make a distinction. Does that make sense, sir?
Yes.
Am I explaining myself? Maybe I am not coming across clear enough. It is a complex subject. This is a subject that we as human beings have been asking and pondering about since we call ourselves human beings. And yet we still trying to figure out, and we make it very occult, very mysterious, very esoteric. The other day there was a person who knocked on this door and was walking into the library and happened to step in front of the vault that we have down there, a safe. He comes to the front desk and says to me, "Is there where you have all the esoteric teachings and all the books hidden?" And I say, "No." They're all there in the library for everyone to read. All there is just old papers, prisoner letters and things that are of value to us, but you might consider as, invaluable or with no value at all. And so he was really mistaken, or thinking that he was going to find something of the extraordinary, here that no one else was in touch with. And so that's how we distort this, these teachings of these things that are simple at the very end.
One last question. Not from you.
That's okay.
You can stay and continue the conversation, please, because obviously it is something that's of interest, and it's intriguing. But unfortunately, time does limit what we can do as a group before we end the formal meeting. And I do want to make just a couple of announcements, if I may, Danelys.
Sure.
And thank you so much, Danelys.
My very pleasure.
Maybe.
I'm glad that I didn't cancel it. I was this close to cancel it.
Yes, Danelys has been under the weather, but she's got the spirit and the drive. Thank you so much. If I just can announce that we do have a workshop on Saturday. That's this coming Saturday, November 17. It's an all-day workshop with Christina Pateros, and Christina does workshops here maybe a couple of times a year. She travels to Chicago, and her main area of study is shamanic or shamanism, and she's going to do a workshop on the shamanic way of living, honoring, growing, and manifesting. And if you are interested in reading more about that, just go to our website and look under events, or just pick up one of our program catalogs. And if you would like to register for that, please do. We can still take additional people. Thursday next week, Juliana Cesano. Thursday the following week. Thank you. Thursday next week, Turkey Day for the non-Theosophists, and Tofuku Day for the Theosophists is a day for gathering together and enjoying our community, our family and friends, and rejoice in all the gifts that we have. So I hope you do enjoy next week. And the holidays. But I do hope you will come Thursday the following week. Thank you, Paula. Juliana Cesano is going to be speaking on the thunder of silence. And you can read about that on our website and in the program catalog as well. Thank you all for coming this evening. Thank you, Danelys.
You're welcome.
Please stay and have some refreshments and continue the conversation.
Thank you very much.